Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Arlington Branch NAACP 2022 National Black History Month celebration. We understand the weather is nice outside; it's quite brisk, but we're honored and privileged to have with us today a phenomenal speaker, native Arlingtonian, who's going to speak with us about some Black history. Many of you know him, Dr. Scott Taylor. But again, we really appreciate you taking an hour of your day to spend with us as we come to the end of the month, right? But make no mistake about it, that Black history is American history, and it's not just 28 days out of the year, right? So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over. Before I turn it over to Marvin, I think it's extremely important. We typically start a lot of our events off with prayer, but given the magnitude of what's going on in the country of Ukraine, I would ask that we all just take a moment of silence to either pray as you do, or just recognize for peace to our friends over in Ukraine. So with that being said, let's please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Again, let's keep our friends in Ukraine uplifted in prayer and thoughts as they're going through some really difficult times right now. All right, with that being said, I'm done running my mouth. I'm gonna turn it over to our chair of the Freedom Fund Banquet Committee / Special Events, Mr. Marvin Nils.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to spend this Black History Month program with us. We have a great speaker for you all today, Dr. Scott Taylor, who swiftly volunteered to come on as a guest speaker for our Black History Month program. If you have any questions during the program, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them as Dr. Taylor has time. But without further delay, let me introduce you to Dr. Scott Edwin Taylor, who is a third-generation Arlingtonian raised in the historic Halls Hill neighborhood. In addition to a master's degree in journalism, Dr. Taylor is a nationally and internationally recognized musician. And I'm not sure he's going to be playing music today, but he does have the talent. He continues to be active in the Arlington community through the African American Leadership Council and many other organizations. He participated in the committee for renaming Stratford Middle School to Dorothy Hamm Middle School, and a committee that proposed naming a park after Selina Gray, a former Arlington enslaved person. Dr. Scott Edwin Taylor is president of the Black Heritage Museum here in Arlington, located on Columbia Pike. The museum, which details Virginia's home to the longest continuous experience of African American culture and life in the United States. African American history in Virginia dates back to August 1619, when the first Africans were involuntarily brought to the shores of historic Jamestown. The proud, rich heritage and struggle of the Black experience in Virginia is unmistakable. Withstanding the bonds of slavery, fighting for freedom, and striving for equal rights and progress, African Americans played a vital role in the formation and development of Arlington County. African American history is not a separate component of the Arlington story, but a central part of the shared history. And yet, the telling of the story of African American heritage in Arlington is far from complete. Without further delay, I introduce you to Dr. Scott Taylor.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I don't know how great I am. God is great, not me, but I certainly have the passion for the people who have come before me and who have most definitely a stake and a claim in making Arlington the wonderful, wonderful county that it is. And I thank you for mentioning about the first Blacks that came in 1619, and there's evidence that a few of them were up here in Arlington. So the Black history in Arlington has been rich for a long time, just kind of been sort of secretive about it. But that is what my job is, and the museum is to make sure that we are being a voice for these people, that we are basically sitting on the shoulders of, I mean, the reason why we have so much luxury and things that we, money and things we have is because of those people. As you mentioned before, pretty much that, Arlington is vibrant. It's vibrant with Black history. And like you said, it's American history. And I'm praying for the day when we don't have to call it Black history, white history, or whatever, that it's just history. And I think that a lot of people are just afraid of speaking about it or hearing about it, because our history in America started with slavery. I mean, that's ugly. That's ugly. But our history is not all about slavery. It's about overcoming. And anybody, I don't care what nationality that you are, you should be able to get something from this history. There's going to always be mountains. And these people learn how to, if they couldn't move the mountain, they understood how to go under it. You know about the Underground Railroad, go around it and go over it, and become triumphant. And that's what we have to learn. We have to learn how to progress, even though there are certain entities that are kind of still trying to hold you back. You can make it. You can make it. The history, the Black history in Arlington really goes back. It starts in Mount Vernon, and we know that George Washington had slaves. The only ironic thing about it is George Washington was one of those people that spoke out against slavery, although he had slaves. He inherited, I think, 153 from his dad, and those were his slaves. Martha Washington, his wife, a lot of us know, maybe some don't know, that George Washington was actually her second husband. Her first husband was Augustus. So she got those slaves. And we call those slaves dower slaves. And George Washington really didn't have any power over them except to tell them what to do. He could not free them. And of course, a lot of this freedom, he wanted to free slaves because when they went from tobacco to grain, they didn't need all that help. So he had a surplus of people working there. And because of this surplus, a lot of the slaves were loaned out to other plantations as far down as Pomoki, up in Fairfax. And that's why sometimes it's really hard to track these families down back that far. But upon George Washington's death, he freed his slaves. And of course, we know that the Custis slaves were then given to George Washington Parke Custis, and he brought them to Arlington House in 1803. And as soon as they got here, they began working on the Arlington House, of course, building their own slave quarters first. And it's a reason why I am sort of bittersweet about some of the negativity that we have against that Arlington House. It was an emblem sort of for Arlington, but we have to remember that enslaved people built that Arlington House brick by brick. George Washington Parke Custis didn't have a lot of money. What he had was land. So these people had to not only go out in the woods and create lumber, they had to make the bricks that they put on that house. And it's a beautiful place. And when I see it, I see the work of my people, and I'm proud. So we have to sometimes think outside the box, and we don't want that labor to be in vain. And of course, it was mentioned about Selina Gray, who we now have a park named after. If it wasn't for that strong Black woman, you wouldn't see the artifacts that are in there now. And I hope you guys get to go out and see the Arlington House because they have a new tour. They've been re-educated, and they really know the history, and they're telling it. And they're talking about Selina Gray, how she saved the artifacts there when the Union Army came in. And also they talk about people like James Parks, who dug those graves, and also was one of the ones that was able to tell us how they lived there. When the New Yorker magazine interviewed him a little bit before his death. Then we know about the Syphax family, which Charles Syphax came from Mount Vernon. And of course, we know that they are related. Maria Syphax is the granddaughter of Custis, and they were given some land on the Arlington House. And that land, of course, is used for Freedmen's Village. And Freedmen's Village was set up in 1863. 1862, slaves were pretty much free here. And so a lot of slaves ran up to Arlington, and there were contraband camps all over. There were actually 2 contraband camps at Arlington House before Freedmen's Village. And of course, they had several in DC. And that's pretty much where Freedmen's Village started, in DC. They had these contraband camps that were full of disease, and people were on the streets, and they had to do something about it. And the government decided to build a large contraband camp here in Arlington. And because the fresh air, this was basically a rural area. And we know now, because of COVID, that when you're outside, it cuts down on disease. So the whole Freedmen's Village was built sort of like an army camp. And it was 2-story families, and people came to learn how to be American, how to live the American dream. And these people were taught to read, they were taught to write, they were taught how to be proud, they were taught to be something no one uses anymore, a credit to your race, that type of thought. And they had fantastic teachers. Sojourner Truth lived in Arlington for about 5 years. As we got closer to the turn of the century, Freedmen's Village was not a safe place, because a lot of people didn't want it here anymore, because these people were only allowed to be there for a certain amount of time. You learn to read and write, you got a trade, and then you had to move off and start your life. And a lot of these people came off of Freedmen's Village as landowners, because a lot of the white people after the Civil War fell on bad times. And there were Black people just buying up this property. A lot of it was even up in Halls Hill, a lot of that property. And we know that from probably 1870 to almost 1920, Arlington was 90% Black. And this didn't sit well with a lot of people. And so around 1900 is when they really decided to get rid of Freedmen's Village. And people were compensated because they paid a lot of taxes. It wasn't free to live there. People only made about $10 a month, and you had to pay at least $5 a month to live there. There was a tax that you had to pay, and people were still able to save money. And so when they came off, of course, here comes a lot of the Jim Crow laws that were set up. There were things where you were no longer allowed to have duplexes and 2-family homes and things like that, because a lot of Black people, people of color, that's what we did. We 2 and 3 families living together, and everybody putting in the pot. Of course, we had our churches that came out of Freedmen's Village, and these churches did more than just give out the word of God. They were like the light on our communities. There was Mount Olive, which is still in existence. Mount Olive bought all that property by the Pentagon, which became a Black neighborhood called Queen City. When Jim Crow came in and they were trying to move the Black people out, they were really harsh with people paying their mortgages. If you were just late one time, they were ready to kick you out. But these churches and places like the Odd Fellows Home, which was also in Queen City, would help these people to keep their rent and their mortgages paid. You know, that just shows how much of a village this was and how people just kept helping each other. Of course, when you have these Jim Crow laws come in, it's hard to maintain. We see now, as we get into the 30s, the 20s, we see the Confederate names going up and different things such as you had to pretty much prove you were 100% white to get into a swimming pool or go to a school and things like that. And although those laws are, those things are against the law now, you know, people are still feeling the backlash of that. It's difficult to catch up after you've been oppressed for so long. But the beautiful thing about this is showing you how the people just kept pushing. And I have to talk a bit about Halls Hill, because that area was full of activists and civil rights people that did a lot of fighting even early on. There were two slaves who were the children of Farr, who won a case when Basil Hall beat them, and you weren't allowed to do that. They were his slaves at one time, but when they were free, they still worked for him, but for money. And he lost the case. So that was one of the first civil rights cases ever. Of course, they just gave him a pat on the hand. He didn't go to jail or anything, but it was the start of people fighting back. And that is something that we have to keep going in our culture. Sometimes we are afraid of maybe losing our jobs or losing our positions, and a lot of us are quiet, and we're depending on other people to fight the battle for us. But you have to keep going. And one of the reasons is because we forget. And I think about last year when I was getting so many calls and emails and things about helping with the museum, because people were very melancholy about the George Floyd case. I very seldom hear anybody talk about George Floyd. We forget. And that's another reason why we have to continue to talk about this history and continue it, because people forget, and then we start going backwards. And I don't think anybody wants to go backwards. Talk a little bit about, I mentioned Queen City, which was a vibrant, you have to come down to the museum. I've got some very rare pictures of that neighborhood and some of the people that, their faces that were there. They were, of course, moved off of there to make room for the Pentagon. They wanted to have a way to go in, and these people were displaced, and they ended up living in areas that were, you know, worse than what Freedmen's Village were. They were ended up in trailers, and they weren't even told what day they were coming to demolish that neighborhood. And these are things that we have to keep going back and looking at, because they still kind of happening today, but in a different type of way. But like I said, Arlington was vibrant with Black people, and there were a lot of Black areas. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it shows Brown's Bend, which is behind Halls Hill. Halls Hill, Pelham Town, which was over there at Marymount College, was a vibrant Black area. Boston, where looks like New York City now. These were Black areas. Johnson Hill, Green Valley, Hatfield. Roslyn was a place that had a lot of Black activity and people. And the amazing thing about Roslyn is those people got along very well. They went to clubs and did things together. That is something. We talked about Queen City in East Arlington. So this is how Arlington was. And basically, Arlington was like a swampland. These people sort of nurtured the land. And then Arlington comes in with this vision of a new Arlington, but these people just were not in the vision. And I don't know if we still are. I mean, we're down now to where I think 9% of us are left here now. So, and this is another reason why we have to continue talking about the history, because somebody has really got to be a voice for these people. Green Valley was probably the first really vibrant Black neighborhood. Selina Gray bought a whole lot of property over there at first. And there are a lot of Grays still left. We know about Leonard Doc Muse, who came from DC, but opened up that pharmacy because we had to go into the back door to get our prescriptions. And that's another thing. We are considered a minority in America, but our dollar is big. So they've always wanted our dollar, but just didn't give us the respect for it. And then we come in where we had to fight just to sit at the lunch counters back in 1960. And I remember my father, they asked him, would he be a part of it? Of course, a lot of people from that time didn't want to, because they didn't think they'd be able to do the nonviolent way. But I have a picture here in the museum that shows the drug fair where my dad's boss at the time, because he worked at that drug fair that they came to, and asked my father to take off all the stools. And my dad, of course, didn't do it, but I have that picture. But it took 2 weeks, and then we were allowed to sit at the lunch counter. But we could buy food there. You just couldn't sit there. You could buy clothes. You just couldn't try them on and bring them back. So it was all these things where they wanted our dollar, but just didn't give us the respect for it. And I applaud the people, Joan Mulholland, who used her white privilege to help these Black people. And when I show people some of the pictures of the protesters, the people are integrated. A lot of these protests would not have worked if it was all Black people or it was all white people. So we have to get together. And that is one of the things that the powers that be, above the president and all of that, they don't want Black and white together, especially poor whites and Blacks together. That's a lot of power. But I really believe in integration. There is power in integration. I'm praying for the day that we not only continue to work in jobs together and stores, but we end up going to church together and praying together, because there's power in combining the races. And we have to know that this whole integration thing is all about power. And we have to be smart and know better.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
Look like we have a few interested questions from the wall in Halls Hill.
Hope I can answer it.
Miss Melody Mobley asks, what should be done with the wall at Halls Hill? Should the remaining portions be restored? Should it be removed? What do you think? And Miss Judy Robinson says, can you talk more about your book, The Wall?
Okay. That wall up there, which is interesting, we were surrounded by the wall, but you couldn't see it unless you went through the woods, and because it was woods in front of it. I don't believe in tearing down history. I don't believe in tearing it down. Thank goodness for people like Sandra Green, who is an activist still on Halls Hill. They were able to get a marker on a portion of it to let people know this is, this happens. And it's not a pretty thing, but you have to put these things in people's faces to let them know, we went through this and we deserve something.
You wanna, this is for you to scan. I'll put on here scan,
I'm sorry.
okay?
Somebody say something? Okay. So I would like for it to stay. It is a historical site, and people need to see that this is how stupid people were to separate. And the book is actually a children's book, but adults will like this too. And it's all about the day that some friends and myself, we climbed the wall and ended up meeting some kids and because so you went through the woods and then there was a wall and then it was somebody's backyard. And we were able to play for a little while, but one of the kids who I ended up going to school with the next year at Glebe Elementary said, "You guys can't be over here," and blah, 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 blah. But it just goes to show there's always one. It just takes one to take you back. And my dad always tells me the story about how they used to play football with some white kids down by Stratford. This is back in the 40s and 50s. There will always be one person to come out there and say, "Hey, you guys are not supposed to do this." And thank God there was more people that say, "Hey, we are supposed to be together."
And Marvin, you want to go ahead, Marvin? I think the second part of the question was talking a bit about your book.
Right. So it's right. So the book is, like I said, it's a children's book, and it's available here at the museum. It's not on Amazon or anything like that. Just come on down. All proceeds go to the museum, and it's just about the day that some friends and I climbed that segregation wall and met some new kids. When we got back over, of course, I was always told not to go in those woods. But we did that day. And then my grandfather sort of explained some things about, why we are separated like that. And a lot of us, a lot of people just accepted it. You kind of like knew where you were supposed to be. But I have to always reiterate to people that I had a great childhood. And even though we were separated, from other people there, we depend on each other, and I have to really say basically we loved each other. When we have the turkey bowl every year and I see people that I haven't seen in a while, it's like seeing a family member. So it was that village whatever, and I'm so proud of not only myself. There is Lydia Jones has a book out about our experience. Her sister Wilma. There's Nadia has Conyers has a book out about Arlington. There's Clark. There's so many books coming out about our experiences here in Arlington. It's a great feeling and a very proud one. Charlie Clark.
We have another question from Miss Melody. She says, "I was the first Black female forester in the USDA Forest Service. When I'm out hiking in Arlington and other places, I rarely see African Americans. Why is that?"
We gone, baby. We were, like I said, at one time, this was a Black county at one time. Then I think in the 1920s, we went down to maybe 11%. And that's just how it is. There's gentrification. It's going to always be change. We can't stop that. But what we can do is to keep our history. And that's our job here is to keep your history. And I'm just hoping that more people come down here and see the other side, the other history in Arlington. And I'm talking about too, the first responders, the new firemen and policemen, who a lot of them don't even live in Arlington. Come down here and see this side, these secrets, this history. I think everybody should know exactly how Arlington got to where it is today. And like I say, the Black Americans here, our early ones, have a stake and a claim to it.
There's some interesting conversation going on in the chat concerning contraband camps. And I thank Ms. Wilma Jones and Edward Hermer for participating in those conversations. Do you care to elaborate more on the idea of contraband camps?
Well, first of all, like I said, we had contraband camps before Freedmen's Village. There were actually 2 on the Arlington House property, which were put there on purpose because they felt like it was a slap in the face to General Lee. There was one up past Marymount, and then there was one in Falls Church. And what they told these people, a lot of them were escaped slaves, because we were already freeing slaves in as early as 1862. And if you join the Union Army, then we got you. And these people, like I say, were taught reading and writing, not to the magnitude that they were on Freedmen's Village, but they were set up at these camps, and they were down as far as Richmond. So they were set up all over. It was the beginning. Some people just wanted to be free and start a new life. There were others who stayed with the Confederate, but the ones that were brave enough to come, and this was their start. And it's confusing to the point because the government was saying they wanted to teach these people the American dream, and it seemed like once they started, then they were slapped down and had to fight. So that is confusing, but that's what pretty much what happened.
Great, thank you for that answer. That clears up a lot as well. Ms. Linda Simmons, she asks, how could she provide support to the museum as far as gifts and historical documents? I have her information for you, so I'll provide that to you after the meeting. But she also asks, can you tell more about the museum, the location, hours it opens, and how we can become members, and the future, the way ahead of the museum?
Okay, so we actually started in 1995. Of course, I wasn't on the board then. Evelyn Syphax is our founder. Of course, she left us in 1999, I believe. And she was also the president of the Arlington Historical Society. And I just could not understand, why she wanted this. And it took me a while of just, reading articles about her that I would find. And I actually have a picture on my desk in there of her. And now I understand that she wanted to have this museum so that we could tell the story from our perspective. See, a lot of times when they tell the stories, it is watered down. And so, and there's people that come in here that sometimes I offer the tour, but they don't want to hear, they just want to read it the way and interpret the way they want to. But I just thank God there's people like myself and Dr. Alfred Taylor, Wilma Jones, and a lot of other ones who lived this history and are still here and able to tell. But yeah, we always need help. We're going to be moving soon, and we're going to be paying more rent. So we always need money. As far as artifacts, we need artifacts that pertain to Arlington Black history. Some of y'all are cleaning out your garages and sending stuff down here. A lot of it I just give to the goodwill. I mean, it has nothing to do with Arlington Black history. I mean, we really can't use it, but we love pictures. I would love to see more pictures of places like Columbia Pike back in the 20s and 30s. Even if it's your relatives standing in front of your house on your street back in the day, things like that we can use. So we always are happy about receiving those things. We're only open twice a week. We're open Thursday and Saturday. Saturday 2 to 5, and Thursday 3 to 6. We will open by appointment only. So if you have a group you want to bring in, if you want to come by yourself, just shoot me an email. I'm only 10 minutes away. I will be glad to meet you. And we have coffee, we have Wi-Fi. You come and spend the whole day down here as long as you want to. We like that.
Great. We have another question from Mr. Adam Theo regarding the wall. He asks, is any of it protected with deed restrictions on a private land that it's owned, or would the county have to purchase parts to protect it?
That's a good question. For all I know, it was just a wall that separated the neighborhoods. To get into that, you probably have to call the county and find out about that. But you know, most of that wall is gone. Most of it is gone. So I guess it would be just like a fence you have on your own property. You know, this side is yours, this side is mine, that kind of thing. But it actually was just to divide, like I say, the white section from the black section. My dad and some other people feel differently. Now, they say that that wall was put up because, like I say, there was wooded areas that separated us too. And he feels, and some of his friends felt, like the wall was just so that the weeds wouldn't get in their side. So different people have different remembrance about that. I've always been told it was a segregation wall, and that's what it was to me. But you can call down to the county and find out ownership and those types of things.
Thank you. Great. So I was sitting at a restaurant one day, and I was talking to this gentleman, and he says to me, if you want to find some unknown Black history, search for train stations. And I know we have a train station in Alexandria. Did any of the Black residents in Arlington contribute to any of the current transportation services that we utilize to this day? Do you have any historical knowledge on that?
All I can say is probably, because you have to understand that Alexandria and Arlington were at one time one. Arlington didn't become Arlington, I think, until 1920 or 21. I know we just celebrated the 100th anniversary, I think last year. But Alexandria and Arlington were a county together. So probably when you go down Ridge Road and you go into Arlandria, all of that was connected to here. So there was a connection. So probably, but a lot of our residents went to DC for things. So DC and Arlington were like that. A lot of our schools, a lot of Black kids went to school in Arlington back in the day, because, you know, during that time, the schools were teaching trades, and you were majoring in things like secretarial stuff or auto mechanics. So sometimes Hoffman Boston, which was our Black high school, didn't have it. So you have to go to DC, and but Alexandria sure was a part of us too.
Marvin, I want to jump in for just a second, if you don't mind. Dr. Taylor, it feels kind of strange saying Dr. Taylor when I know.
Call me Scott, man.
But we're getting close to the end. I want to kind of talk a little bit about reflections, right? So the museum plays an integral part to our community, artifacts, things of that nature. And you talked a little bit about you're going to be moving. I think it'd be good for this audience to know, where are you moving to? Are you going to move, right? We know you have to, but tell us a little bit more about that. But I'm also interested in knowing, we got the past, we know where you are right now, but the future. What's the takeaway from today's event that you want everyone to leave and go home with and remember, right? And how can they be involved, right? Because there's more to it than just a museum, right? Which is important, but how are you going to challenge us? All right.
Okay. First of all, about moving, I can't talk too much about it, but we're getting close to some things. I really want us to stay on Columbia Pike because Freeman's Village was down the street, the Freeman's Village Bridge, the Gray House is right there, St. John's Church, which was also a school for the colored. So we're hoping that we stay here, not in this place, but on the Pike. Yeah. So I can't really go into it right now because we're still in the process of doing things about that. You talk about the past. The past is important because if we don't continue to talk about it, then it will be forgotten. Mm-hmm. The work you're doing now, Spain, you want somebody to remember what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just doing it for the fun of it. You know what I'm saying? You want somebody to, especially if you're working hard and diligently. If you're working as hard as me, we don't sleep at night. There's no sleeping. Yeah. And you want to leave something behind, or you want people to appreciate what you've done, because it's not about getting rich from it. It's about preparing our people in the future, because it's about them, really. It's not about us. So that's why it is important. When we say we don't, we're funny about not teaching this history in the schools, that's wrong, because somebody has to be a voice for all that blood that was shed. Mm-hmm. Also, I want people to understand, especially Black people, that Black history is not all about slavery. That's just a part of it. It's not about, get out there and find out about all the inventions that were made. And the reason why Lincoln signed the proclamation pretty much because of Frederick Douglass, that's why he did that. And we need to continue to teach children these things. And when we get this history out and get it out right, we don't even need to have the Black Matters anymore. I mean, we gotta get out there and scream Black Lives Matter. You know what I'm saying? And all of us are sitting here on the backs of these people. Look at Wells Fargo. They're still in business because of slavery. So, and our Black people. So we have to continue to get the word out. Now, you talked about the future, and sadly, you have to continue to talk about this history to get us keep moving. We deserve the things that we're fighting for. It's not that we're fighting for because we want them. It's because we deserve them. And when we look at our history and then we say, hey, we're not going backwards. And not only that, we are going to get all races involved in this fight, because all of this really, it's about all races too. I mean, slavery, all of us are connected. We're all connected. And so,
Dr. Taylor, I'm going to open this up for some other folks, but I'm going to push back just a little bit because you said something. And I think until we, 1619 was many moons ago, but until we root out institutionalized racism and systemic racism, we're always going to need NAACP and perhaps even the Black Lives Matter in some regard to fill that void. I am hopeful, as are you, that we will be able to find the day when we don't need them, right? I know our president of the NAACP, Derek Johnson, tells us a lot, you know, but I think the change is not coming fast enough. So we're always going to need people to fill that void strongly as these problems, more especially with policies that were written intentionally to discriminate large groups of people, not just Blacks, right? So with that, I know we have a number of questions out here. Marvin, are you back up and ready to go?
Yes, sir. It's a question regarding keeping the museum on a pike. Any chance of sharing space with any new library on a newly county purchased property at 3108 Columbia Pike?
That's a soft spot for me. That's where we were. That's where we were. And I love being there because we were able to accommodate a lot of people. NAACP held meetings there for years. I even think, Spain, you guys came a couple of times when you were at the head. And I love that spot we had because I could have all of us together. They moved us out and told us to move. They did not tell us that the county was going to. We never knew. And we were also involved in the meetings that were held at the Career Center because they were saying once they redo a library, there will be a space for the museum, and then those meetings stopped. And then I just learned a couple of weeks ago that the county has that spot up there. So we're looking at, I did have a county board member down here twice this week, and we're talking about it. Of course, that'll be a couple years down the road when they renovate. I think they're going to put affordable housing behind it too. But that is an option, and we should be in there because we are important. Like I said earlier, a lot of our first responders and teachers and nurses and doctors don't live in Arlington or new here, and they need to know the whole story, the whole thing. And I think once they know, they will get involved. And I would love to see more, not just integration in the neighborhoods, but into things like the museum and NAACP. We got to fight this battle together, all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. So if I'm remembering correctly, that's the SunTrust area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
So at this time, I would like everybody to give Dr. Taylor a virtual round of applause.
Thank you for having me. Thank y'all so much.
Thanks, Dr. Taylor. Thank you to everybody who came out to support the 2022 Black History Program. It is always my intention to get to the nuts and bolts and belts and fuel filters of the engines of civil rights and Black history. We are often inundated with the engines of the movement, the Martin Luther Kings and Malcolm X's. But sometimes we forget when Martin Luther King gave the "I Have a Dream" speech, there were thousands of other civil rights people out there, and those people come from history, and we need to not forget that the engine needs more parts to run. Thank you to the Special Events Committee for always supporting the branch, and of course the Communications Chair who was very diligent in getting the message out. And again, special thanks to Dr. Taylor for gracing us with his presence. And before I turn it back over to Mr. President, I have a few things I would like to say. Please be careful. COVID-19 is still amongst us, and protect yourself and your family. It's a problem if you catch it. Trust me, I know. The deadline to vote is May 30th if you plan on voting in a primary this year. And if you would like to become a member of the Arlington NAACP, please visit our website at www.arlingtonnaacp.com. We are a very active community, and we would appreciate your support. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and let's give Dr. Edwin Taylor a virtual round of applause, right? Hit your little button. As the first VP, Kent, are you still listening with us? Are you on?
Yes, Mr. President.
Where you at, sir? Can we see you? Can I see you, sir? Hello, Mr. Carter. Where you at, sir?
Working? How you doing?
There he is. I just want to, none of this is possible. It's definitely a team effort, the Arlington branch of the NAACP, and I just want to yield a moment or two for our first VP if he has any words that he wanted to share with the audience. Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to again congratulate our special committees for putting this event on tonight. I want to thank Dr. Taylor for all the great information as well. And also, we welcome the historic nomination for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's really historic. Her stellar background as a public defender. Judge Jackson brings deep experience, brilliance, and a diversity of perspective to the bench. So we're super excited for that. Looking forward to making history, living in history. And again, thank everyone for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Vice VP. And to Dr. Taylor, before I close, I do have a few words, but on behalf of the Arlington branch, NAACP Arlington branch, our executive committee, our members, we thank you. We know you're working hard, and we will provide a $250 donation to the Black Heritage.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. So a few things I just want to, many folks that know me that I like to, you got to seize the moment. There's a number of folks that are on this call that I've seen today. Wilma Jones, Sister Green, historians here in Arlington. Even saw Charlie Clark for Falls Church Free Press, and all of you, right? Scott, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said it's really going to take a collective for us to move forward. It can't be left up to the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, La Colectiva, you name the organization, the clergy and church, to make this happen, to make change. So let's reflect upon not just a moment, right now where we're at, this National Black History Month, but let's think about strongly the future, because Black history informs us, but that also means it helps us shape our future. And I challenge everyone, let's get away from performative allyship. Let's really dig in, have these courageous conversations about our history, but also make sure we don't repeat our history.
Amen. Amen.
So, we don't have to look far from Arlington. We're right on our edges. There's groups of individuals who are trying to change our way of life and our culture, all right? And we cannot allow that to happen, all right? Too many people have fought, died, sacrificed, bled for us to be where we're at today. With that being said, again, if you want to donate to the Black Heritage Museum, I think the link was provided. Marvin, if you can add that again before we close out, that would be great.
Yes.
We, again, thank each and every one of you for being with us. If you need anything from the NAACP Arlington branch, please reach out to you. Otherwise, God bless, stay safe. I know CDC has changed some of their restrictions. That does not mean you don't have to wear a mask. I'm going to wear mine because I've had COVID before. Anyway, that's with 2 shots and a booster. So take care. We're going to give you back your 5 minutes. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Again, God bless you. Have a great evening.
Okay, so I'm here.